Sleep is the foundational layer upon which all mental and physical performance is built. We often think of sleep as the absence of wakefulness, but that's a mischaracterization. Sleep is an active process. It's a period during which the brain and body perform critical functions, consolidating memory, regulating hormones, clearing metabolic waste, and recalibrating emotional circuitry. When we sleep well, we are more emotionally resilient. When we don't, even small stressors feel unmanageable. That's not psychological weakness, that's biology. There's a direct bidirectional relationship between sleep and mood. Poor sleep increases emotional reactivity. Good sleep enhances emotional regulation. This is mediated by a few key neural and hormonal systems. The amygdala, which plays a central role in threat detection and emotional intensity, becomes hyperactive when we're sleep deprived. Conversely, the prefrontal cortex, which governs rational thought and impulse control, loses its capacity to regulate the amygdala effectively. That's why lack of sleep doesn't just make us tired, it makes us more impulsive, irritable, and emotionally unstable. From a neurochemical standpoint, sleep influences levels of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine, neuromodulators crucial for mood stability and motivation. Sleep also regulates cortisol, our primary stress hormone. When sleep is compromised, cortisol levels remain chronically elevated. That leads to a heightened state of arousal, anxiety, and even depressive symptoms. But with consistent, high-quality sleep, cortisol rhythms align more with the natural circadian cycle, promoting calm wakefulness during the day and restful sleep at night. One of the first steps toward optimizing sleep is anchoring your circadian rhythm. The circadian rhythm is essentially a 24-hour biological clock located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus. It controls sleep, wake timing, hormone release, body temperature, and even mood. The most powerful cue, or Zeitgeber, for the circadian rhythm is light, specifically sunlight. Getting 5 to 10 minutes of natural light exposure within 30 to 60 minutes of waking can significantly advance your circadian phase. If you're in an area with low sunlight, even a cloudy day provides enough luminance to trigger the necessary retinal ganglion cell activation. Artificial indoor lighting is not a substitute. It's 50 to 100 times dimmer than sunlight. The light-sensing cells in the eye project directly to the brain's circadian clock. When stimulated early in the day, they set a timer for the onset of melatonin release approximately 14 to 16 hours later. Melatonin is not a sleep initiator but a sleep gate opener. It creates the biological conditions for sleep to occur. By managing light exposure early in the day and minimizing it at night, you create a powerful mechanism for reinforcing sleep consistency and, by extension, emotional balance. Equally important is temperature regulation. Core body temperature follows a circadian pattern. It begins to drop in the late evening, and this drop is what facilitates sleep onset. You can encourage this natural drop by taking a warm bath or shower about 90 minutes before bed. While that might seem counterintuitive, it works by drawing heat to the surface of your skin, promoting evaporative cooling afterward. This cooling effect helps trigger the onset of sleep. Keeping your sleep environment cool, ideally between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit, also supports deep sleep and mood stabilization. Timing of food intake matters too. Eating large meals close to bedtime can interfere with sleep by elevating core body temperature and engaging the digestive system. On the flip side, having stable blood glucose levels during sleep contributes to fewer nighttime awakenings and better emotional regulation the following day. A well-balanced dinner, timed 2 to 3 hours before sleep, allows the body to shift into a parasympathetic state, the rest and digest mode that's conducive to both physical recovery and emotional reset. Caffeine is another key factor. Its half-life is about 5 to 6 hours, but its quarter-life can extend beyond 10 hours. This means even if you stop drinking coffee in the afternoon, a significant portion of the caffeine may still be circulating in your system by bedtime. Caffeine blocks adenosine, a molecule that builds up in the brain during wakefulness and creates sleep pressure. If adenosine is blocked, you may feel alert, but the sleep debt remains. Once the caffeine wears off, you crash. Over time, this cycle disturbs both sleep quality and mood regulation. For optimal sleep, caffeine consumption should ideally end at least 8 to 10 hours before you plan to sleep. Then there's the role of movement. Physical exercise enhances slow wave sleep, the deep, restorative phase critical for emotional reset. Regular aerobic activity, about 30 to 60 minutes a day, most days of the week, has been shown to reduce symptoms of depression and anxiety, largely through its sleep-enhancing effects. But exercise timing matters. Intense physical activity late at night can elevate core body temperature and adrenaline levels, making it harder to fall asleep. For most people, morning or early afternoon exercise is optimal. Sleep architecture, the structure of sleep across the night, also plays a role in emotional regulation. The first half of the night is dominated by slow wave sleep, while the second half features more REM rapid eye movement sleep. REM sleep is when most emotional memory processing occurs. It's the phase where the brain replays emotionally salient experiences and strips them of their intensity, making them easier to integrate without re-experiencing the emotional charge. Disrupted REM sleep is strongly associated with mood disorders, particularly depression and PTSD. Simply put, when you're not getting enough REM sleep, your brain can't do the emotional cleanup it needs to do. To enhance REM sleep, consistency is key. Going to bed and waking up at roughly the same time every day, even on weekends, reinforces the circadian rhythm and promotes a stable sleep architecture. Erratic sleep schedules lead to circadian misalignment, which fragments sleep and leads to mood instability. This regularity is more impactful than total sleep time alone. A consistent 6-5 hours may serve emotional health better than an erratic pattern that averages 8. Pre-sleep routines matter too. The transition to sleep begins well before you lie down. The hour before bed should involve minimal stimulation. That means dim lights, no high-stakes conversations, and limited screen use. Blue light emitted by screens suppresses melatonin in release. If screen time is unavoidable, blue light filters or glasses can help, but the behavioral shift is more effective than any device. For those struggling with anxious rumination at night, there's strong evidence supporting the practice of structured journaling, specifically writing down a to-do list for the next day. This offloads cognitive tasks from working memory, reducing nighttime awakenings. Another strategy involves physiological sighing, 2 inhales through the nose followed by a long exhale through the mouth. This technique naturally engages the parasympathetic nervous system and can reduce anxiety quickly. Supplements can support sleep, but they are not a substitute for behavioral protocols. Magnesium threonate or bisglycinate, apigenin, and theanine can all help calm the nervous system before sleep. However, reliance on supplements without behavioral changes often leads to diminishing returns. The foundation must always be behavioral alignment with your circadian and ultradian rhythms. Speaking of ultradian rhythms, these are 90 to 120 minute cycles of alertness that occur throughout the day. Respecting these rhythms by inserting periods of rest or non-sleep deep rest NSDR during low-energy phases can indirectly support nighttime sleep. NSDR techniques include yoga nidra and certain types of guided hypnosis. These promote parasympathetic activity, reduce cortisol, and enhance the brain's ability to downshift into sleep later on. There is also growing evidence showing the impact of social connection on sleep and vice versa. Loneliness is correlated with poor sleep, and poor sleep exacerbates feelings of social disconnection. This is mediated through the same limbic structures that govern both threat detection and emotional bonding. Prioritizing meaningful in-person social contact, even briefly during the day, and anchor emotional systems and promote better sleep quality at night. Alcohol is another common disruptor. While it may help some people fall asleep faster, it severely impairs sleep architecture, particularly REM sleep, and increases nighttime awakenings. It also raises core body temperature and interferes with thermoregulation. For people struggling with mood issues, even moderate alcohol consumption can tip the balance toward emotional instability through sleep disruption alone. Emerging research in chronotherapy suggests that aligning activities with your chronotype, your natural inclination toward morning or evening wakefulness, can also improve mood and sleep simultaneously. If you're a night owl forced to operate on a morning schedule, you experience what's known as social jet lag, which has the same physiological impact as flying across time zones without ever leaving home. While you can shift your chronotype over time with light and behavior, simply understanding your natural rhythm is the first step toward better alignment. Lastly, it's important to remember that sleep is not just about quantity, but quality, and quality is determined largely by continuity and depth. Fragmented sleep, even if it totals 8 hours, is not restorative, and no intervention works unless applied consistently. The nervous system thrives on patterns. Repeating the right behaviors at the same times daily creates internal predictability, which in turn reduces stress and improves emotional regulation. So if you're seeking greater emotional resilience, sharper cognitive function, and a more stable mood, the first place to start isn't a motivational video, a supplement, or a podcast, it's sleep. And sleep, when harnessed correctly, is the most powerful non-pharmacological lever we have to regulate emotion, manage stress, and create a life of clarity, energy, and emotional intelligence. Sleep is not just a passive process, it's a recalibration tool, one that fine-tunes our cognitive and emotional systems with incredible precision if we give it the conditions it needs, and one of those critical conditions is regularity. This isn't about being perfect every night. It's about creating a rhythm that your brain and body can predict. That predictability is what allows the autonomic nervous system to shift smoothly from sympathetic dominance, our alert, goal-directed state, into parasympathetic tone, where recovery, healing, and emotional resetting take place. One major reason emotional regulation improves with good sleep is that sleep consolidates learning. Not just academic learning, but emotional learning. Let's say you had a disagreement with someone, and it left you feeling unsettled. During REM sleep, particularly in the second half of the night, the brain reprocesses the emotional tone of that event. It doesn't erase the memory, it strips away the emotional charge. That allows you to remember what happened without being hijacked by the same intensity of feeling. Without this nightly processing, emotional memories remain raw, leading to intrusive thoughts, overreaction, and even emotional numbness. So, improving sleep isn't just about feeling rested. It's about completing the emotional digestion process that's required to move forward. When people say they wake up feeling emotionally exhausted despite sleeping long hours, the culprit is often poor sleep architecture. Shallow or fragmented sleep disrupts the sequence of cycles, preventing the full expression of both slow-wave and REM phases. Factors that impair this include irregular sleep timing, overexposure to artificial light, stimulants, emotional arousal close to bedtime, and even irregular breathing patterns like those found in undiagnosed sleep apnea. Breathing irregularities during sleep may go unnoticed, but they prevent the necessary drop in heart rate variability, which is crucial for true recovery. In fact, high heart rate variability during sleep is a biological marker of emotional resilience. It's a sign that the nervous system is toggling properly between arousal and recovery states. Even the angle at which your head rests can impact sleep. There's data suggesting that sleeping with your head slightly elevated, just 10 to 15 degrees, can reduce the likelihood of mild airway obstructions and enhance glymphatic clearance, the brain's waste removal system that ramps up during sleep. The glymphatic system clears metabolic byproducts, including beta, amyloid plaques associated with cognitive decline, but perhaps more immediately, it helps regulate levels of key neuromodulators like dopamine and serotonin, both of which are essential for stable mood and cognitive flexibility. Sleep isn't a switch, it's a gradual transition, and one of the most overlooked elements in managing this transition is your exposure to light in the evening. Light, particularly in the blue spectrum, inhibits the release of melatonin. Melatonin begins rising naturally about 2 hours before your typical bedtime. This process is easily disrupted by screen use, overhead lighting, or even brightly lit bathrooms. The solution isn't complicated, but it requires discipline. Dim your lights in the evening and shift toward warmer hues. Ideally, limit screens or use tools like blue light filters or glasses. If your environment doesn't allow for light control, wearing a simple pair of amber tinted glasses in the last 2 hours of the day can drastically reduce blue light exposure and improve sleep onset latency, the time it takes to fall asleep. The other often misunderstood element is noise. Even when sound doesn't wake you, it can fragment sleep cycles. The brain continues to monitor the environment during sleep, and unpredictable noises can shift you out of deep sleep into lighter phases. Consistent background noise, like white or pink noise, can help mask those unpredictable spikes and protect sleep integrity. What's especially interesting is that during slow, wave sleep, the auditory cortex is still active. This means chronic noise exposure during this phase can impair the emotional recalibration that sleep is supposed to provide. Emotionally, one of the clearest benefits of good sleep is its effect on social cognition. After one night of poor sleep, people are more likely to misinterpret neutral facial expressions as threatening. Their ability to empathize decreases, and they are more prone to frustration. From a neurobiological perspective, this is due to a reduced connection between the amygdala and the medial prefrontal cortex. Without proper sleep, the emotional brain gets louder, and the rational brain gets quieter. In this state, you're not just more emotional, you're also less able to understand what others are feeling, which increases social conflict and deepens emotional isolation. One often overlooked variable in sleep health is posture and musculoskeletal tension. If you're carrying tension in your neck, shoulders, or jaw, especially from unresolved stress throughout the day, it can prevent the full parasympathetic shift required for sleep initiation and maintenance. Practices like progressive muscle relaxation or even a few minutes of mindful body scanning before sleep can downregulate this residual tension. The same applies to breathwork. Simple protocols, such as 4 seconds inhale, 6 seconds exhale, signal to the brain that it's safe to relax. These signals aren't abstract. They're encoded through the vagus nerve, which communicates directly with the brain's arousal centers. Another concept to internalize is sleep debt. Sleep debt is cumulative. If you lose 2 hours tonight, you can't completely make that up the next day. While a nap or extended rest can help partially, the brain keeps track, and this accumulation leads to shifts in mood baseline. People start to normalize irritability, fogginess, or lack of motivation. They assume it's their personality or a psychological issue when it's often biological, driven by chronic partial sleep deprivation. The great news is that the brain is forgiving. A few consecutive nights of good, quality sleep can dramatically improve emotional regulation, memory retention, and even hopefulness. Yes, there's data showing improved sleep enhances optimism. It's also important to understand that sleep and inflammation are tightly linked. Poor sleep increases systemic inflammation markers like IL-6 and CRP. These inflammatory signals cross the blood-brain barrier and influence neurotransmitter systems that regulate mood. Chronic low-grade inflammation has been implicated in the development of depression, anxiety, and even cognitive decline. On the flip side, anti-inflammatory lifestyle choices, like consistent sleep, regular movement, and a balanced diet, create a positive feedback loop between the immune system and emotional well-being. Hormonal regulation is also a critical bridge between sleep and emotional stability. For example, growth hormone is secreted in pulses during deep sleep, and this hormone isn't just for physical growth. It plays a crucial role in tissue repair, immune modulation, and even mental clarity. Testosterone, which affects mood in both men and women, is largely released during sleep. Chronic sleep restriction leads to reduced testosterone levels, which correlates with lower motivation, increased irritability, and emotional flatness. Likewise, leptin and ghrelin, hormones that regulate hunger and satiety, are influenced by sleep. When sleep is inadequate, ghrelin increases and leptin decreases, which leads to increased appetite and cravings for high-calorie foods. This not only affects body weight, but also contributes to emotional volatility via blood sugar dysregulation. The gut-brain axis is another system intricately linked to both sleep and mood. Your microbiome follows a circadian rhythm, and irregular sleep can disrupt microbial diversity and function. This leads to reduced production of short-chain fatty acids and neurotransmitters like GABA, which support calmness and emotional resilience. Prebiotic and fiber-rich foods consumed consistently during the day can support a healthier microbiome, which in turn supports better sleep, which then enhances mood and stress tolerance. A feedback loop that's biological, not theoretical. The last thing to emphasize is agency. Many people feel powerless in the face of sleep issues, especially when they've had years of poor rest, but the nervous system is plastic, it can adapt. And when we create the right inputs, light, temperature, movement, meal timing, cognitive wind, down, breathing, sleep improves, and when sleep improves, emotional regulation improves. And when emotional regulation improves, everything changes: your capacity for joy, your ability to stay calm under pressure, your connection with others, and your belief in your ability to shape your own life. None of these improvements require perfection. They require intention, repetition, and self-awareness. Most importantly, they require consistency, not rigidity, but predictability. A body and brain that know what to expect will serve you far better than a life full of late nights, catch-up sleep, and inconsistent signals. Once you begin to prioritize sleep, not just as a way to rest, but as a way to take control of your emotional life, your internal state will begin to reflect the stability and strength you've always been capable of accessing. When we begin to understand sleep as a lever we can pull to stabilize our inner world, we stop treating it like a passive event and begin approaching it like training. Just as physical performance is shaped by deliberate warm-ups, rest periods, and recovery strategies, emotional performance, our ability to respond to life rather than react impulsively, requires the same structure. The foundation of that structure is sleep. Not just how long you sleep, but how well your brain moves through its natural stages of rest and recalibration. There's a kind of emotional integrity that emerges when sleep is consistent and high quality, and it's driven by specific mechanisms that are as predictable as gravity once we understand them. Think about how emotional reactivity tends to manifest in day-to-day life: short temper, impulsive decisions, disproportionate responses to minor stressors. That's not a personality flaw. It's often the byproduct of a hyperactive limbic system that hasn't had the opportunity to cool off. The limbic system, particularly the amygdala, operates like a smoke detector, scanning for threat. When sleep is impaired, that detector becomes overly sensitive. It starts to misfire. Your brain begins flagging harmless signals as dangerous. An offhand comment from a coworker, a delayed response to a text, even your own internal doubts, they all get amplified. You're not overreacting because you're weak. You're reacting because your brain's emotional circuits have lost their tuning. Sleep is how that tuning is restored. Each night, the prefrontal cortex, your rational filtry, establishes its connection with the emotional centers of the brain. Without that reconnection, you operate without a regulator, and the smallest friction can feel like a threat. There's also the concept of emotional memory tagging. During waking life, your brain doesn't just log facts and events, it tags them with emotional weight. Sleep helps strip those tags down to their essentials. In healthy sleep, especially during the REM phase, the brain replays emotional experiences without the same levels of stress hormones present during the day. This allows you to retain the lesson or the insight from an experience without staying stuck in the feeling. That's why after a good night's sleep, problems seem more manageable. It's not just that you're rested, it's that your emotional system has had a chance to recontextualize what happened. This process makes it possible to move from rumination to reflection. And without this nightly reset, emotional clutter builds up. We begin to carry yesterday's weight into today's conversations, today's decisions, and tomorrow's outlook. Beyond the neural dynamics, there's also a metabolic component to how sleep supports mood and self-regulation. Cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, is tightly linked to circadian rhythms. In a healthy cycle, cortisol peaks in the morning to help you feel alert and focused, then gradually declines throughout the day. But if sleep is misaligned, either in duration or in timing, this rhythm is disrupted, cortisol may spike late at night, impairing sleep onset, or remain elevated during sleep, preventing the necessary drop in core body temperature that initiates deep sleep. This creates a vicious loop. Poor sleep elevates cortisol, and elevated cortisol disrupts sleep further. What makes this significant is that elevated cortisol isn't just a physiological stress marker. It directly impacts how you interpret the world. When cortisol is high, your brain becomes more vigilant, scanning for danger, more likely to interpret ambiguous cues as negative or threatening. That heightened reactivity over time leads to chronic anxiety, irritability, and even depressive symptoms. Sleep also interacts directly with dopamine pathways. Dopamine is often misunderstood as a pleasure chemical, but it's more accurately described as a motivation and drive signal. It helps you pursue goals, engage with novelty, and find reward in effort. When sleep is fragmented or insufficient, dopamine receptors become less sensitive. This means the same rewards, social connection, achievement, even creative breakthroughs, don't generate the same satisfaction. It becomes harder to feel motivated. This can lead to a state of emotional blunting where everything feels flat or gray. You're not necessarily sad, you're just disconnected from the drive that fuels engagement. In this way, consistent high-quality sleep becomes essential not just for mood regulation, but for the capacity to care, to strive, and to connect meaningfully. There is also a fascinating relationship between sleep and problem solving. Many people have experienced going to bed stuck on a problem and waking up with a new perspective. This isn't mystical. During sleep, particularly during REM, the brain strengthens distant neural associations. It pulls from experiences, memories, and even subconscious material to form novel connections. This is the foundation of insight. What's important to recognize is that emotional challenges are also problems to be solved. Feeling stuck, confused, or ambivalent, these aren't just emotional states, they're signals that your brain is trying to resolve something. Sleep is how it processes those signals. It sorts emotional input, filters noise from meaning, and synthesizes experience into clarity. Without this process, emotions don't resolve, they linger, and when they linger too long, they harden into patterns. Another area worth focusing on is social behavior. Sleep deprivation makes people less likely to engage socially, less generous, and less able to read emotional cues accurately. This isn't just a matter of being tired, it's that the social brain becomes impaired, eye contact feels more intense, tone of voice becomes harder to interpret, and conversations require more effort. This can lead to isolation, not because someone chooses to withdraw, but because social interaction becomes more taxing. Over time, this contributes to loneliness, and loneliness itself becomes a stressor that impairs sleep further. It's a self-reinforcing cycle. The path out of that loop often starts with one intervention, better sleep. The timing of sleep is just as important as its duration. Humans are diurnal, which means we're biologically wired to be awake during the day and asleep at night. Disrupting this pattern, staying up late, waking at irregular hours, shifting time zones, has profound effects on mood. This is not just psychological, it's embedded in the molecular machinery of our cells. Every cell in the body has a circadian clock that governs gene expression. When sleep timing is off, these clocks fall out of sync, a condition called circadian misalignment. This leads to metabolic dysfunction, cognitive fatigue, and emotional dysregulation. Realigning your sleep schedule, even by just 30 to 60 minutes, can restore coherence across these systems. It doesn't require radical overhaul, just consistent cues, natural light exposure in the morning, regular meal times, reduced light and stimulation at night, and movement during the day. Movement during the day plays an often underappreciated role in sleep quality. Physical activity, especially in the early part of the day, helps set the body's sleep-wake clock. It increases adenosine, a neurochemical that builds up sleep pressure, the biological signal that tells your body it's time to rest. When you don't move enough, adenosine accumulation slows down and sleep onset becomes more difficult. That's why days of physical inactivity often lead to restless nights. Regular movement, even light walking, not only improves sleep latency but also increases slow wave sleep, the phase most associated with physical recovery and emotional recalibration. It's another example of how behavioral inputs, things within our control, shape our internal state with tremendous leverage. What often gets missed in the discussion about sleep and emotion is the role of internal dialogue. When people struggle with sleep, they often begin to dread bedtime. They associate their bed with frustration, with staring at the ceiling, with the anxiety of another day starting without rest. This anticipation alone can activate the sympathetic nervous system, elevating heart rate and cortisol, and making it even harder to fall asleep. Breaking this cycle requires a shift in self-perception. The goal isn't to force sleep. The goal is to create an environment, internal and external, that invites it, that includes the way we speak to ourselves, replacing "I have to fall asleep" with "I'm giving my body the opportunity to rest" is not just a semantic shift, it's a biological one. It reduces pressure, lowers arousal, and allows natural processes to unfold. The relationship between sleep and emotion is ultimately about stability. When sleep is consistent and high quality, your brain is able to update itself each night. It integrates new information, recalibrates emotional tone, and restores executive function. This gives you what we might call psychological range, the ability to navigate highs and lows without becoming trapped in either. It gives you the ability to pause before reacting, to hold two conflicting thoughts at once, to be patient with others, and to be more attuned to yourself. These aren't soft skills. These are hardwired outcomes of physiological processes that sleep enables. Emotional resilience, flexibility, empathy, motivation. These are all downstream effects of a brain that's been allowed to recover and reset. If there's one unifying idea here, it's that sleep is not a luxury or an indulgence. It's not something to fit in after everything else is done. It is the platform on which all other aspects of emotional and cognitive performance are built. Treating sleep with the seriousness and respect it deserves isn't about being disciplined for the sake of discipline. It's about understanding that your internal experience, your moods, your thoughts, your reactions are not random. They're shaped profoundly by how well your brain is able to function, and that function is reset every single night by sleep. If you want to feel better, if you want to think more clearly, if you want to be less reactive and more grounded, the path forward begins not with what you do during the day, but with how you prepare for and protect the night. So if we step back and look at the full picture, it becomes clear: sleep is not optional for emotional well-being, it's foundational. When you improve your sleep, you're not just getting more rest, you're enhancing your brain's ability to regulate emotion, process stress, manage social interactions, and recover from the mental weight of daily life. You're giving yourself access to clarity, to calm, to control, and it's not about perfection, it's about consistency, small science. Informed shifts in your sleep habits can create outsized returns in your mood, your mindset, and your moment-to-moment experience of being alive. The nervous system is not built to grind endlessly, it's built to cycle, to recover, and to grow stronger through rest. When you give your body and brain the right conditions, they know exactly what to do. Let sleep do its work, because when it does, you show up as the version of yourself that you were always meant to be.